welcome to TYT Community here on the TYT Network. The show, of course, paneled by members and fans of the Young Turks. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight on the live stream. I know we did a little switcheroo of the times, and it didn't go quite as planned. The Young Turks' main show, Disaster, is our disaster. But hey, we're a network. That's what we do. We're all in the same boat together. So thank you guys for waiting and tuning in, watching us here live, here on the TYT Network, here on TYT Nation. I am, of course, your host, Jeff Waldorf, here from Michigan. And with me today, I have Sean Fitzgerald from New York and Nick. I'm not sure how to say your last name. I'm going to butcher it, so I'll just call you Nick. Coming at us from Canada. Man, we've got some great stories today. Some of these you may have already seen people talk about, but we're going to go over it in our own little way, our own little fun way. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I want to start out actually with a devastating poll, and I want to get started with that. So, is Obama the worst president in modern times? I mean, with scandal after scandal, the IRS, Fast and Furious, Benghazi, the horrible rollout of Obamacare, trading terrorists for one alleged deserter. I mean, the answer is pretty obvious, right? Well, according to a new poll out from Quinnipiac University that surveyed nearly 1,500 people, around a third of them say that obviously President Obama is the worst president since World War II. 33% of Americans polled say that Obama is the worst since World War II, and only 28% say George W. Bush was the worst president. Now, I'm going to get to that in a little bit of a minute here, but I wanted to share who most of the voters thought was the best president since World War II. Was it Bubba? Bill Clinton? Well, some might argue for him on his behalf. Was it John F. Kennedy? What about Nixon? No, it's definitely not Nixon. No. Who was it? A majority of Americans said that Ronald Reagan frickin' Reagan was the best president America's had since World War II. Isn't that amazing? Ronald Reagan. Now, it's no surprise to me why. Because the right, the Republicans, conservatives, they treat Ronald Reagan like a saint. Morning in America. Well, he obviously caused the Soviet Union to collapse because of his tough foreign policy, and he cut taxes for everyone. He took back our country from those crazy leftists like Richard Nixon. You know, because Nixon created the EPA, right? Crazy leftist. So pretty much all you hear about in the news is Ronald fucking Reagan.
It seems like everyone is invoking Ronald Reagan.
I worked with President Reagan.
My first vote for president was in 1980 for Ronald Reagan. I watched Reagan. I watched every speech that was on TV. I watched every press conference. And I just studied him, and I've read every book that's ever been written about Reagan, and I just find the man fascinating.
What can President Obama learn from Reagan?
That's right. Fucking Ronald Reagan. They idolize him. And look, personally, I'm sick of it. Reagan is essentially Republican Jesus. Despite the fact that he raised taxes 11 times, massively grew government. Now, check out this chart. Look at that. Look at that spending, especially compared to Obama, who's the, like, king socialist, right? Which is funny, king socialist. Doesn't make any sense, right? And look at that. 8 point, like, off the charts, almost. Ronald Reagan's first term. And his second term, a little bit better. And then look at Obama. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And look at what Reagan did. He traded arms for hostages with Iran, funded Nicaraguan death squads, South America, gave amnesty to 3 million undocumented immigrants, supported an assault weapons ban. Yes, he pushed for an assault weapons ban. and argued for a market-based healthcare system. Sound familiar? If Ronald Reagan were alive right now, the right wing would call him an evil socialist tyrant. Best president since World War II. And Obama's the worst. Now, okay, so before you get after me about this in the comments, conservatives, I've got a few issues with Obama. And I think part of that 33% that think Obama is terrible are comprised of angry liberals like myself. We get kind of pissed off that he doesn't seem to understand that the right wing will never like him, will never work with him, even if he takes their ideas, and even if he gives them 99% of what they want. He'll still get criticized for holding out on that 1%. He could be exactly like Ronald Reagan policy-wise, and they'll still hate him because these people are absolutely irrational. They hate him because he's a black Democrat in the White House. Look, and one more thing. The problems that we have today that Obama is being criticized for are problems started under Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush. Now, Clinton gets some of that blame, too. I'm not leaving him out of it. His massive deregulation, bringing the Democrats over to the center, to center-right. But, look, according to conservatives, everything was just great until Obama was elected. And that's not reality. Now, I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. Nick, Sean, what do you think about this poll, and what do you think about Reagan?
Well, let me jump in because Nick's Canadian, and this is an American poll near the birth of America, which is tomorrow, 4th of July.
Lies. 2nd of July.
Don't get involved with your facts in my story. So yeah, I think you're focusing too much on the Ronald Reagan aspect of it. Like, is Obama the worst president since World War II? Probably not. Like, it's probably George Bush or a guy who scored very high, Lyndon Johnson, who started the Vietnam War for no reason, which is very comparable to the Iraq War, probably worse in terms of lives lost. But I don't think, I think this is a case of, the ghosts of presidents living on and becoming better. Like, people don't realize this, but during the 2000 election, Bill Clinton was asked not to publicly campaign for Al Gore because Bill Clinton was considered toxic at the end of his second term. Like, not as toxic as George Bush or Barack Obama, but he was still down with scandals. So basically, or not with scandals, but down in the approval ratings. Because basically, second-term presidents, everybody hates them. Like George Bush had the same issue when he was in his second term near the end, around this time. I would assume every other president doesn't score high when they're alive. Reagan didn't score high in the last term of in his last few years. It's just the way it is. And think about it like this: so many people hated John F. Kennedy that we don't know who shot him in the face, and he scored third on this list. So it's really an irrelevant poll. It's really about who you know more, or who's more recent. That's who you hate.
Okay. The last point Sean is dead right about. It's really about who you know, and that's indisputable. However, you started off bashing LBJ, so now I have to come and bring this back to reality. LBJ did not technically start the Vietnam War. The planning for the Vietnam War had been in place, well, for a long time under JFK. He's the one who at first escalated the troop quantities into upwards of 10,000, and had he still been alive, there's a very, very good chance he would have followed through with it anyway. LBJ was the kind of guy who's in a very tricky situation. He gets in, he doesn't really want to deal much with the Vietnam War. He wants to focus on his domestic social policy. He wants to craft the Civil Rights Bill. He wants to be that kind of president who focuses on that. At the same time, he's getting all sorts of pressure left and right about how to conduct the war. Should he stay in? Should he get more involved? Should they continue to prop up this government that they've been supporting since the 50s that really has no place in being there? Or should they let it bow to what will inevitably be a communist takeover of the country? It's the rock and the hard place situation for him. There's no good answer. No way he would have wound up being looked on favorably by anybody, either way he went. So I'm much more lenient of what he did. However, the fact that Eisenhower didn't make like second or first, that Reagan beat out Eisenhower, is amazing to me. Eisenhower, the guy who's by name recognition alone, if we're going by that, the supreme Allied commander who led the Allied forces to victory in the Second World War. And he did not make...
I have an explanation for that, actually. The poll says since the end of World War II. That's why he's
right.
That's
right,
probably
but he was president. No, I get you, but he was president since World War II. Right. So, by that, you'd think there'd still be some name recognition there that, oh, he was president after, but he was still the guy who led us in the Second World War and stuff.
Well, no, well, here's the thing, too.
He was decent, too. He was not a bad president, so...
Well, here's the thing, too. People don't have that long of a memory. And Sean's point is exactly correct. Right, his last point that he made, it's about who you know. And basically, and the good example that I brought up Reagan is because everybody talks about Reagan. Everyone talks about Reagan. Fox News doesn't shut up about Reagan. He's the conservative Jesus. Like I said, he's Republican Jesus. They bring him up just as many times as they bring up Jesus, literally. And so, yeah, of course, people are going to be like, I don't know, I heard Ronald Reagan was like fucking awesome, so I'm just gonna answer Ronald Reagan because apparently everyone thinks he's awesome.
I also got to jump in on this point because in true conservative fashion, they will even throw the Gipper under the bus. They're not afraid to do it. And freaking Coulter did it a couple months ago, where she said we have to start moving away from Reagan. We have to stop being so devoted to Reagan. Reagan's not right enough. So if he doesn't fit their plan anymore, they're more than happy to get rid of him. It's just the fact that he's a president who presided over the collapse of the Berlin Wall that he gets any real sort of recognition. And he brought the American Navy too, but that's about it.
And the economy.
He also came up with the trickle-down theory, which everybody, like all the conservatives, are using, the supply-siders. Well, so, that's their go-to thing.
He didn't come up with it. Like, he's the guy who you could say helped implement it. But like, Ronald Reagan ain't no economist. He was an actor. He didn't come up with nothing. But the thing I want to just to touch on the
he's credited with it. He's credited with it.
Just to touch on Lyndon Johnson, he staged the Gulf of Tonkin incident to go into Vietnam. So that to me, that's the end of discussion on that guy. But
you're right about that fact. That marked the escalation into the Americanization of the war. You're dead right about the fact. However, the escalation had been going on well before LBJ got in office. But you're right, he did instigate the catalyst.
Regardless, I want to get back to the issue at hand.
Right.
Like the fact that it's Obama's in office and we see Obama on TV, and like I'm sick. Like I got sick when I saw George Bush on TV over and over again. And, like, it's just you're at that point where you get sick of seeing this guy on TV. So you're like, who's the worst president? The guy in the White House right now. Like, it's not a huge surprise. And what also helps is that George Bush has kind of gone away for 6 years. So, like, he hasn't been pissing people off. I'm sure if you asked who's the worst vice president since World War II, you would have two things happen. One, it would be Dick Cheney overwhelmingly. And number two, people would say, would only be able to remember 3 vice presidents in their entire life. Like, people don't care. But, like, that's the thing. It's just whoever's recent or really awful. And that's just how it is.
All right. So, with that, I want to get on to the next story. Now, we've got actually a really great story about corruption. Great as in terrible. But nonetheless, it's a great story. So, we're going to go after that. The House Ethics Committee, in an incredibly ironic move, eliminated the requirement that all expense-paid trips given to members of Congress be reported on annual financial disclosure forms. Now, free trips paid for by private groups must still be reported separately to the House's Office of the Clerk and disclosed there. But the annual financial disclosure just happens to be where a lot of journalists go and find out these things. Okay, so a little bit of clarity there. Now, all expense-paid trips are pretty common for members of Congress to take. It's another form of legalized bribery. And before this rule changed, the disclosure statements, like I said, were a great way for journalists to find out who's buying our congressmen and, paying for these lavish trips. And actually, this rule change was found out because of journalists. And they had noticed that there were some entries missing. For example, and this was wrote in the National Journal in a piece written by Shane Goldmacher, he wrote, quote, House Majority Leader Eric Cantor, who led a GOP delegation of lawmakers to Israel last summer, paid for by the American Israel Education Foundation, which is, of course, closely tied to the pro-Israel lobby, did not include the trip on his annual forum. House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer, who led a similar trip for Democrats, did include it on his forum, but some of the rank-and-file members who went on the trip with Hoyer did not. See, that's interesting, because the House Ethics Committee made this change in a secret closed-door session with no announcement. And we only found out about it, like I said, when journalists noticed inconsistent records. Now, this is some obvious chicanery. At a time when, according to the National Journal, free travel is back in. There were nearly 1,900 trips at a cost of over $6 million just last year. And here's some more information on these trips. Now, one trip to Australia earlier this year cost nearly $50,000. Lawmakers are often invited to bring along their husbands and wives, fly in business class, and stay in really nice four-star hotels. Now, it's important to note that lobbyists are actually banned from organizing or paying for these trips, ever since, like, Jack Abramoff did it, right? But you see, they were able to actually get around that by setting up some non-profit organizations. This is how they buy the government. Now, there's one more quote here, and this is from Melanie Sloan. Now, she's the executive director of the group Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. She said, quote, the more you can hide, the less accountable you can be. It's clear that these forums are useful for reporters and watchdogs, and obviously a little too useful. Look, this is an obvious case of these politicians, they know they're getting bribed, and they know the American people hate it, right? And it looks bad. But instead of being principled and not taking those bribes, they try to hide it. And if it weren't for investigative or independent media, they would have gotten away with it. Now, I want to go to my panel. I want to ask you guys what you think about this this rule change. Let's go with you, Nick.
I honestly don't have much to say about it other than it's pretty sneaky that they made this change and didn't make any announcement about it, and it's especially sneaky that they've been getting away with this for a little while. It's another way of trying to almost basically have your cake and eat it too, to rabble-rouse and cause all these issues about government spending, meanwhile leave out the fact that you're incurring millions of dollars in travel expenses, and you're not hiding that from the American people. But there's not much else to say other than that it's despicable. And up here, my mayor from my home city was recently tried and found guilty of doing much the same thing, of taking taxpayer money for personal benefits, of funding his son's wedding or something. And then other councillors have been charged and found guilty and prosecuted of the same thing. So the fact that your federal government can do it, hide it, is absolutely unbelievable.
I mean, I do want to clarify one thing. They're not using taxpayer money technically. They're basically getting free trips from non-profit organizations. But like that's essentially like a bribe. Like I mean, I know this is like super obvious to everybody, but if you go on like The Price is Right, and you win one of those free vacations to like Nebraska or wherever the fuck they send you, one of those horrible places like Nebraska, then you have to pay tax on the travel expenses and the tickets and all that, because that is a form of compensation. So these groups are giving money directly to politicians and their families, and like somehow that's legal, and on top of that they don't have to share that information. And on top of that, they're so dumb. Like everybody knew about their trip to Israel. It was public and all that. And like they chose not to fill out the proper documentation because they changed the rules, but they chose in that instance not to do it when the news cameras followed them there. So we knew that they went on this trip, but they should tell us how much money they received in compensation from the people who paid for the trip. So I think this is actually a pretty like clear case of something that doesn't only need to be reported; it needs to be like cut out. You have to cut that shit out. You can't be going on vacations for that are paid for by special interest groups. Like that's crazy.
And that seems like such a sensible, such a normal thing to say. Like, yeah, obviously you can't we don't want our politicians to get bribed, but that's the system that we set up. You know, we set it up to where corruption is normal, and it's sort of amazing how normal it is.
But this is to me this is different from like the Citizens United, which is groups indirectly spending, or campaign contributions, which are limited to a certain extent. Obviously, it's not as much as people on this panel would like, but like you're literally $50,000. That's over any campaign limit. Like you're paying for a $50,000 trip for them and their family. Like you're also paying for meals, and we don't know like the true cost of the entire trip, like plane ticket, hotel, tour, food, like that all should be added up. Like if you want to pay for a trip, and that's your campaign contribution based on the system that we have, and it has to go under that limit. Like you can't overspend it, even if you call yourself a 501c4 or whatever. That's ridiculous.
And the thing that's most troubling about this, I was going to say, the thing that's most troubling about this is that you know that the people who are paying for these trips, they're going to want to call in their favors. Like, hey, yeah, you remember when I paid for you and that lovely wife, or you and that lovely trip with your lovely wife, right? Well, I want something now. Here's a model bill that I want you to push through.
See, this is actually one of the things why I was initially unsure of the TYT Wolfpack 28th Amendment thing. Is I wasn't sure if it would be inclusive enough because of things like this, where they're bribing them not directly with money or with super PACs, but with providing vacations, providing trips, providing expenses for those things like that. And it always stuck in the back of my head, where it's like, oh, we need you to pass this bill. Here's six Corvettes. You can maybe sell those for some money. Is that enough to get this bill through? Does that sound good? I was a little hesitant at first because I was worried about all the possible loopholes that there could be. But that's
actually obviously corrupt. That's quid pro quo, which is obviously that's illegal in the strictest terms. Like you can't actually say, here's the car. Oh, by the way, I want you to vote on this. Right. So that's like the obvious form of corruption.
Well, that's the gift limit, and I think that's actually a devastating point by Nick, because the gift limit isn't even $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever. The gift limit is like $500 or something. It's in most states it's very, very low. Like you can't give somebody a really expensive present, which is what these vacations are. Like that's obviously outside the bounds of reasons, and like. The fact is that's straight up illegal, but all we're asking them to do is report it, and they still won't do that.
Right, and just having it passed under the cover of darkness, and like that they know that they're up to some shit, and they're like, we don't care, we want our free stuff, so we're gonna get it one way or another.
Well, especially after
you don't find out.
Well, even the big thing is this. Also, I don't even think this would probably limit vacation trips or any type of trip showing up on their list of expenses too. So, including the guy who what was he? He was the Republican candidate someplace, and he was caught banging a mistress in like South America, and his whole staff had no idea where he went. Things like that. This almost seems like a little bit of a follow-up on that to try and fix that a bit too. I don't know. I can't help but get the feeling that little bombshells like that are going to be a little more difficult to find now.
Yeah, and that's like I said, it's another problem when you have
Technically, that's also slightly different, because he actually used his travel budget that he gets from the Treasury, that's in his, that he's supposed to report and all that. Like, that's different than the private thing. But I think that guy lied and said he was visiting like a diplomat or an ambassador in another country, and then got caught.
I know it's not quite the same thing. I know that he wasn't going on someone else's dime, but yeah, that's more what I was referring to. The fact that he can maybe not put that on his list of expenses now too.
I think that's different. I think you still have to if you spend the congressional or senatorial travel budget. Which, by the way, if we give them a certain amount of money for travel, use that to go to fucking Israel or whatever. Like that's what you have it for. I know it's technically to go district back or state and back, but still, like you have that travel budget. But
that doesn't pay for plush hotel rooms in first class.
Well, then pay out of pocket.
That's what
why should I pay out of pocket Why should I pay out of pocket when there's millions of people's tax dollars at my fingertips?
Oh, not only that, but private donors can go through and set up these nonprofits to go and pay for me. Look, it's not even like we're asking for too much, right? Just for them to report it. Okay, we know you're fucking bought, right? We know that you're for sale. We know you're a fucking prostitute, essentially. Fine. At least let us know who bought you. So at least we know where you fucking stand. And this is the thing that irritates me about this whole thing, is that this is so comically, like, obscene. The fact that how much corruption is going on plain as day, right? And they're trying to hide it, but it's still pretty plain as day that they're trying to fucking hide it. It's sickening. It's sickening that we've gotten to this point. God damn it.
I hear you, man.
You guys want to move on?
I think it's time.
All right. We're gonna run across some SCOTUS decisions now. That should be filled with more rage. Awesome. It's not taking me much today. All right.
I wore a button shirt for easy ripping off, so if I go Hulk, it won't be too bad.
All right. That's disturbing, but okay. All right. It didn't take long for the narrow interpretation of the Hobby Lobby ruling to get that much broader. Just a day after the decision, and a day after Ruth Bader Ginsburg's dissenting opinion that the court has stepped into a minefield, that minefield has literally begun to blow up in our faces. Now, Mother Jones reports that the Supreme Court had ordered the lower courts to rehear any cases where corporations had sought to deny coverage for any type of contraception. Now, that's important because it's for any method of contraception, not just the 3 or 4 cases Hobby Lobby was opposed to and appealed on. Okay. Now, didn't I warn you guys after the ruling that this would allow corporations to deny all contraception coverage to female employees? Now, I kept getting comments on a video I did on the day of the ruling telling me how narrow this ruling is. Oh, but Jeff, this ruling only prevents corporations from having to cover abortion pills if they're religiously opposed. It covers the abortions. It stops, them from having to pay for killing babies. First of all, you're a fucking moron and don't know how contraception works at all. So you should shut the fuck up right there. But no, they're also saying they're just protecting religious freedom. Bullshit. Now companies can officially choose not to cover any of the 20 different forms of contraception that had to be covered under the ACA. Now they can claim a religious objection to any of them. But hey, corporations are people, my friend, with speech and religious rights that now trump yours. Look, if you didn't think that this was going to get worse, you guys weren't paying attention. This is not a victory for religious freedom. Once again, and I said it before, it's a victory for corporate personhood. Now, what do you guys think of this broadening of the ruling?
Okay, so first thing I want to break down is it hasn't broadened yet. There are people that are trying to make it broader, but the ruling is still narrow. Like Ruth Bader Ginsburg's or her minority interpretation of the ruling is the minority interpretation of the ruling. It's not the general ruling. So they're going to rehear these cases, and even if they rule that all companies that fit in this category, which is, I believe, a small group of people that own 50% or more of the stock, can deny contraceptive care, or certain amounts of contraceptive care, or every contraceptive care, that still isn't like as broad as people think it is. So it's
no, but you got to look at the precedent that it's set, and because of the ruling has set a certain precedent, you've got a lot of other companies that are coming in already and saying, hey, we want the Supreme Court to hear our case. Based on the Hobby Lobby ruling, we should be able to deny our female employees contraception that we are morally objected to.
Right. I got that.
Breaking down the entire birth control mandate.
Well, I mean, in my opinion, first of all, the religious thing, like that you have a religious exemption, like that's like for churches, whatever, that's an argument to be made. But like for like business owners, like I don't see the point of a just moral religious exemption, that you have to have a genuine, I forgot what the exact word that they use, belief. A closely held religious belief. Right. I think that's ridiculous, but I also think that the mandate is not like logical. I think that the employer and the employee have to come to an agreement on what type of compensation that they have, and a healthcare package is included in that. So I don't like this special religious thing that's unprovable, what's inside your heart and how you feel in the Hobby Lobby case. But like the reaction to this case is what like I'm trying to like work my way around to. The original part of the case is ridiculous because it hasn't happened yet that they've ruled that all these companies can deny coverage. Two, even if they did rule that, like you gotta like there's nobody forcing you to work for that company. You could go somewhere else.
No, Sean. The court went and said, by the way, you can now appeal for a religious exemption.
You can appeal. They want them to rehear and rejudge based on that precedent. So they want the lower courts to interpret the higher court ruling, because there are certain cases that weren't Hobby Lobby cases that didn't get accepted into the Supreme Court that they want them to review. But that doesn't mean that all contraception won't be covered. And even if all contraception is not legally obligated to be covered, that's not a huge deal. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you don't have the right to free birth control. You don't have the right to free anything. Like, I want birth control to be available. I advocate for it being over the counter in all the forms where it's perfectly safe. The government requires women for no reason to go through an invasive exam to get prescriptions for things like the pill it doesn't make any sense. But like the idea that you have a super right that allows you to force employers to provide something to you is ridiculous, and I don't agree with that. So I don't agree with the ruling, and I don't agree with the people who are outraged at the ruling at the same time. Suck on that.
No, not buying it, dude. I think that everybody does have a right to control their own, reproductive organs.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
You can. I'm not saying ban it, but you can't force other people to pay for it. Like, that's a super right.
Okay, no, because the problem with that is if you society pays for unwanted children anyway. Either way, you're paying for it. So why not do the fiscally responsible thing and pay and have insurance companies pay for the birth control? Remember, like if you're an employee, you're also paying for that insurance through the company.
Right, but first of all, your argument is because the government created a welfare system that it can't maintain, then they should restrict people's freedoms. That's ridiculous. Number two, the government is the one who incentivizes you to get.
Okay,
The government incentivizes you to get your insurance from your employer instead of giving you the same tax breaks for buying your own plan, which is also ridiculous. There's no reason that should be the case.
Okay, so whose rights are being restricted? A corporation doesn't have rights. Okay, as a business owner, I get that you have your own certain religious rights, right? If you don't, if you don't want to take birth control, that's fine. Like, that's your religious right. But as a company that provides a service for employers, these employees should be able to choose what their insurance company covers.
But what if you only have what if your employer offers you a healthcare plan? One covers everything except contraception, and it's half the price of the plans that do cover contraception, but are missing other things. Like as an employer, you're paying for part of that plan. You have the right to pick which one that you want to provide to your employees.
Sean,
hold on. As an employee, you have the right to work somewhere else, buy your own plan, pay for your contraception out of pocket. Like you have all these different options. Like this ruling doesn't necessarily restrict contraception. Like it's ridiculous the religious aspect of it, but like the concept that you have the right to obligate somebody else to pay for your stuff is also ridiculous.
But Sean, here's the problem with that. The companies who appealed the decision, like Hobby Lobby, aren't the ones offering a health insurance plan that has everything except contraception. They're companies that are offering probably the bare minimum that they're required to offer, and that's as far as they want to go. Now, okay, you can disagree, and I'll hear your rebuttal on this. But first, I just want to say that I'm not as certain as being a man. I'm not entirely certain quite how it works up here in Canada, but I'm fairly sure we have our contraceptive at least partially covered by, if not health insurance from our work, then by our at least in Ontario, our Ontario Health Plan, which allows us to have certain medical expenses written off on taxpayers. But so the idea to me that a company shouldn't provide contraception to its employees if the employees can't afford contraception on their own, or as part of a deal that makes it more or easier to acquire, easier to get. I don't know. I don't quite buy it. It's one thing if the employee has the same views and says, okay, I want the plan, I won't do the contraception thing, that's fine. I disagree with the very fact of taking away the option in the plans, though. If as a company, and sure, as the head of you have the right, clearly through the recent court ruling, the head of a company has that right to do that. But I don't think, morally speaking, if we're going to go for the moral argument, I think they're morally reprehensible for taking that approach, because the moral approach would be, here's the option. I disagree with you if you take it, but I'm not going to be that much of an asshole to take it away from you.
Well, first, they're not taking it away, because you can go get those 4 options if you want. But the Hobby Lobby
at a much higher cost.
The Hobby Lobby.
I'm saying there's a cost associated with that a lot of people who, I mean, not necessarily working at Hobby Lobby, since they actually do make a decent wage, and I'm going to give Hobby Lobby credit for that. They actually do offer a pretty competitive wage, even for part-time. So, that notwithstanding, if other companies start to do this, and it's not just Hobby Lobby that's objecting to covering these 4 different types of birth control and Plan B pills and stuff, you've got, God damn it, I lost it. It's gone. Gone.
Well, let me just get into this. First of all, the Hobby Lobby healthcare plan covers 16 of 20 contraceptive options. The ones that they don't cover, 2 of them one of them is Plan B, another one is an emergency contraception. The fact that that's covered by insurance is completely unnecessary anyway, because if you're in a situation where you need to take Plan B, it's over the counter and you should get it as soon as possible. You shouldn't go to a doctor, make an appointment, get a prescription, then go get it. It's $50, sometimes $40, sometimes $60. I don't want to get personal on how much I know that, on how the reasons I know that, but you want to take that immediately. You don't there's no reason for you to go to a doctor for that. So that's not an undue burden in cost, in my opinion. I get that some people might have that. That might be a lot, but it's better than a pregnancy or an abortion, which is $500. Also, the IUD isn't covered. The IUD is $500 to $1,000, which is very, very expensive. I'm not going to say that people shouldn't be upset about that if they want it, but if you compare it to what the pill would cost or what anything else would cost, and factor in that an IUD can last from 5 to 12 years, then like that's really not that expensive. It's $500 to $1,000.
Well, when you think about it, but that is a huge upfront cost, and the thing about that is that with birth control is that it's not one size fits all. Okay, is that you have so many different options of different birth control methods because it's necessary, because not all women are the same. Not all women respond to the same level of hormones that are in those birth control methods. So that's why you're supposed to have all these different options. And the whole religious exemption is based on faulty science.
But
they believe that those things are abortifacients, okay? They believe that they cause abortions. The whole ruling is based on a faulty presumption, on faulty science, and that's one of the reasons that I mostly disagree with this ruling.
Well, I disagree
from reality.
I disagree on the religious exemption and all that, but the thing is those three options plus like one more that's another like a longer term one, right? Like those are the ones that are banned. Or that aren't banned. Those are the ones that you can't get through your insurance if you work at one of these weird corporations that has a few employees that control 50%. It's a long, complicated thing for you to be exempt from those requirements. But they still are 80%. And all those different types you can get on and they'll work with you and all that. Like you could do trial and error. There's no reason like why Plan B and like the other one, like those are emergency contraceptives, so they don't really need to like those don't even count as like a long-term plan, like a long-term family planning thing, in my opinion. So like it's really 90% of the types are covered. So like but the thing that I just wanted to point out was I lost my train of thought.
Okay,
I'm not the only one today.
I just want to jump. I lost my train of thought mid-sentence before, but I managed to recover. Jeez, guys. But anyway, one thing I wanted to say was the challenge of this is also the fact that it sets a precedent. And we can tell the precedent is set is a very negative one based on the number of court appeals now coming forward that are looking at the Hobby Lobby decision and trying to appeal further to get more concessions out of this. And that's the problem. That's the problem where if you give ground on even some of this, I know it's usually slippery slope arguments aren't good, but we're seeing the evidence that it actually is a slippery slope in this case. It's coming back to bite us in the ass. More and more people are trying to apply for more and more exemptions to this ruling. They're trying to get more out of it so they can cover less and less. And that's the
minefield.
problem.
Right. And
the minefield.
And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when she talked about the minefield, she actually talked about other things besides contraception. And we'll have to wait for those appeals to come forward because like those are like bigger problems, and then you'll see. I guarantee you, you'll see the court establish a difference between elective and necessary procedures, which it's not in the Constitution. They're just making shit up at that point. But in reality, like even if the court rules that this small amount of religious corporations have this exemption, it's not like they're banning the pill. Like I understand it sucks that you might have to go pay for it out of pocket. Like, I want it to be cheaper. I want it to be over the counter so it can become cheaper. Like, I want women to take birth control if they want to. Like, I do not want to have a kid. Look at me. I would never be a good father ever in my entire life. Like, any girl that had a pregnancy scare that was somewhat connected to me was scared. Even if we never had sex, she was terrified because she's like, I know this guy, so I'm a bad person. So like,
and this has been Truth Hour with Sean Fitzgerald.
Exactly. So I don't like. It's not like I want this to be restricted, but like, you got to understand that sometimes you have to pay for your own stuff. Like,
Sean, have you ever been? Okay, Sean. So, do you think people should be doubly taxed? Like, are you against people getting taxed twice?
What is the double tax argument? Of course, I'm against people being taxed once, let alone twice.
Okay, so taking that stance, I'm gonna sort of try to draw a little bit of a parallel. So a woman is working at a place, right, with an insurance plan. She's paying premiums into that plan. They decide they want to stop covering a certain thing because they have a religious objection to it. Now she has to go and pay out of pocket for that birth control. She's paying an insurance premium, and it's not being covered. A certain thing that used to be part of the plan is no longer covered. That's essentially being double taxed. In a way, it's not exactly being taxed, but there's a parallel.
Yeah, one, it's voluntary. Two, because you're paying into the insurance plan and you don't have to work there, and you're paying for contraception on your own. Two, like there are lots of things that aren't covered that aren't contraception that people have to pay even though they have insurance. Like my mom has.
There are times where contraception. 58% of women take contraception for a medical issue.
I don't think I buy that. 58.
No, it's true. It's actually a stat. You can look it up. 58% of women take birth control for non-reproductive, non-sex conditions.
I don't think I buy that 58% of women are on the pill right now. I know that.
Tell you what, I'll fact check that using Google Scholar.
But two, like.
I may be off on my percentage, but I'm pretty sure I read 58%.
My mom has horrible allergies. She has a good insurance plan. That's, by the way, when contraception wasn't mandated to be free, was like 39 cents when under that kind of plan a month. But what she really needs is an EpiPen in case she goes into anaphylactic shock, and that's like $190 under her plan. Like, she's paying insurance, but that EpiPen is not covered under her insurance. That's not a double taxation. And she actually, like, literally needs that for an emergency. But, like, sometimes you got to pay costs out of pocket, and it sucks.
Actually, I think that should be covered.
Well, I mean, should isn't necessary.
It should be covered.
Yeah,
like I would support covering that, just like I support covering contraception.
Well, I think contraception should be covered, but my point is who gets to force who to do what? And I don't think anybody should force. I don't think the government should force people to cover things based on their personal opinion. Like, I would love for it to be covered. I would love for them to give out contraception when you go to ice cream truck. I would love for them to hand you like the pill too.
Well, somebody's got to pay for it.
I want it that.
Somebody's got to pay for it. What you want and what you're advocating for are two completely different things.
No, I'm saying
I want everybody to have access to
Sean,
it. Then I don't want anybody to pay for it.
I'm very wary of the approach you're taking here. This is a very traditional sort of Fox Newsy kind of approach to say, "Oh, I would love for all this to be this thing, but I don't think it should be in it for reason X, Y, Z." So be very careful with your argument.
I want it to be over the counter. I want it to be freely accessible. I don't want the government to force people to pay for it who don't want to pay for it. And for the most part, I don't want the federal government using tax dollars to pay for it. Like certain exemptions, Medicaid, because it exists already. I don't see any reason why Medicaid shouldn't cover certain contraceptions because it exists already. But I'm saying I don't want, if I don't want to pay for something, I don't want to be forced to do so. So I can understand how people who are employers feel if they don't want to pay for something. Like, that is my argument. I'm not trying to fox.
Yeah, but nobody wants to pay for other people's stuff. Like, if you use that argument, then nobody's going to pay for anything. And we're not going to have anything. We're not going to have a society. There are some things that you do have to pay for that go for the betterment of society. That is what we call being in a functional society. There are some things that I don't want to pay for, but guess what? I'll pay for it because it's the betterment of society. And then, of course, there are things that are not the betterment of society that we pay for, like the fucking wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I don't even want to get into that. Send me my fucking, send us our fucking $3 trillion back.
Well, what if you're that crazy lady who has like 18 kids and she thinks the world is better if you pump out a kid every single year? Like, to her, the betterment of society is everybody having 27 kids. Like, betterment of society is an argument. You're just saying what some...
Look,
but Sean, stuff like that happens. Stuff like that happens everywhere. Stuff like that happens here because we give tax subsidies for families with low income and low income housing.
That wasn't
need it, and the more kids they get, the more they get, and they don't spend a lot of it on their kids. Sometimes they just spend it elsewhere.
My point is some people think the betterment of society is something different than others. Like, who gets to decide is my issue. Like, it wasn't my point that she gets welfare or anything like that. I don't even know her situation. She's a crazy woman who's like, there can't be too many children because there can't be too many flowers. That was literally...
Are you talking about Michelle Duggar?
Yes. Like, I don't know anything about her except for that quote. But I'm just saying, like, in her opinion, society would be better if every woman was pumping out kids like a factory. So
that's because she's part of the Quiverful movement that wants to take over the United States and turn it into a theocracy.
Right. Right, but I'm saying the betterment of society doesn't mean the same thing to all people. So when you use that argument, I think that's an irrelevant.
Right, but there is a majority consensus about what the betterment of society is. And for the most part in the United States, I think the consensus is contraception should be available. And that's the betterment of society. And sorry, not just available, it should be covered by health insurance plans.
So the majority gets to enforce their will on the minority in all cases, or just
no,
in the you agree
not
with?
at all. I'm pretty sure there's opt-out options. I don't think this. We're not talking about a situation where because it's on your health insurance plan, the company walks in and forces you to open your mouth and pours the bottle of pills down your throat. That's not what we're talking about here.
Right. That's not what we're talking about. Like, you can't jump to extremes like that. All right. So obviously, Sean, agree to disagree. That's your final ruling, but at least Nick and I are sensible.
That literally is my ruling. Agree to disagree with the court. Agree to disagree with the people who are mad at the court for the most part.
You know what? I'm gonna pull a Cenk and I'll say bless your heart for that. What? You know, man, it's you didn't take a super loony stance. You were trying to find a middle ground. The difficulty is in this one. I'm not sure if there is too much of a middle ground. There is a bit, and you're right to look for it. But
I'm not trying to find a middle ground. I just think I'm trying to be.
You took a very nuanced middle ground approach.
I did take a nuanced position. I wanted everybody to hate me who's watching this, no matter what side of the issue they're on. So yeah.
Reading the comments, I think you might have succeeded.
I'll say what position you took, Sean. You took the wrong position, and that's it. That's how we rule.
That's what she said.
Jeff's show. Jeff is not under any obligation to enforce democracy here.
So more Supreme Court news. We're not done with the Supreme Court yet, guys. All right. Recess appointments. Now, another high-profile decision by the Supreme Court. In a unanimous ruling, the justices struck down 3 of Obama's recess appointments to the National Labor Relations Board. Now, why would they do that? We'll get to that in a minute. First, this decision gives the Senate broad power to basically thwart future recess appointments. So, no more easy recess appointments, right? Because Obama loves doing those. I mean, that's why the conservatives call him tyrant-in-chief. Did you know Obama made 32 recess appointments since he's been in office? 32. Tyrant-in-chief. Obviously, he's just waiting to bypass Congress so he can pack the government full of socialist czars that hate America. Unlike our great conservative president and demigod, Ronald Reagan. How many recess appointments did Reagan make? Yes, I'm beating up on Reagan again. It's beat up on Reagan Day. Well, the Congressional Research Service looked at all the presidents from Obama to Ronald Reagan and how many recess appointments they made. So, like I mentioned, the socialist dictator Obama made 32 recess appointments. Well, what about George H.W. Bush? 78. Big government Bill Clinton, 130 recess appointments. And George W. Bush, 171 recess appointments. Now, wait a minute, that's not right. I thought Obama was evil socialist dictator, trying to pack the government. Oh, what about the great Ronald Reagan? Now, I'm sure he had to have done less recess appointments than Obama, right? Come on. Wrong. 232 recess appointments done by the great Ronald Reagan. Republican Jesus. When Reagan does it, it's more than in America. When Obama does it, it's unconstitutional government overreach. Now, the hypocrisy here is amazing. But I'm not done yet. I have to actually explain why the justices struck this down. Now, it turns out that President Obama tried to appoint them while Congress was still in session. Oh, you see that? King Obama ignoring the law. Not so much. Look, Congress was technically at work, if you could call it that. But they really weren't. They were in something called a pro forma session. Now, what the hell is a pro forma session? It's where Congress can claim that they were working without actually working. So they're there, but they're not really doing anything. Now, Dana Milbank wrote a piece about this in the Washington Post, and he sat down in one of these pro forma sessions. Now, he explains that these sessions are quick gavel-in, gavel-out sessions that can literally last a minute and prevent a sitting president from doing any recess appointments if they do one every couple of days. I think it's like 3 days. For example, Milbank writes, quote, on Monday, the House opened for business at 11:30 a.m. And after 3 minutes and 18 seconds, pretty much time for an opening prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance, well, God bless, literally, it recessed until a similar charade scheduled for Thursday. The Senate gavelled in at noon Monday, and dispensing with prayer and pledge, gavelled out a whole 28 seconds later. These sessions are legislative fuckery at its finest. Now let's be 100% fair. Democrats do it too. Harry Reid, during the Bush administration, did numerous pro forma sessions to block Bush appointments. Let it be known that I am the most fair man in America. Fair is fair. Now, Milbank points out how this only adds to the problem of a do-nothing Congress. He writes, quote, Congress has passed its 56 public laws this year, for a total of 121 since the beginning of 2013. This virtually guarantees the current Congress will be the least productive in history, well behind the do-nothing Congress of 1948, which passed more than 900 bills. But hey, look, remember, they don't want to get things done. They don't want to do anything. Remember John Boehner?
So you have presided over what is perhaps the least productive and certainly one of the least popular Congresses in history. How do you feel about that?
Well, Bob, we should not be judged on how many new laws we create. We ought to be judged on how many laws that we repeal.
And there you go.
Except he repealed none.
Failed.
What a fucking
Exactly.
stupid statement that was. Oh my god.
Well,
the whole point is that these guys, they don't want to do the people's business. They don't want to actually govern. They want to block, try to repeal, shrink government down to where you can drown it in a bathtub and fucking walk away. That's essentially what it is. Now, go ahead, guys. Sorry I cut you off.
I actually don't agree with measuring the congressional success and the amount of bills that they pass. If they did repeal laws like, I don't know, drug laws and all these other kinds of crazy federal laws, then that is super productive. That's more productive than passing laws or whatever, but they're not even repealing anything, like except for Obamacare, 197 or whatever time. That's a made-up number. I know it's like 50. Except for repealing that in the House a bunch of times. I would love for them to repeal bad laws. Like, that's great. That's more productive than passing quote-unquote good-intentioned laws. But to get to the issue at hand, which is the Supreme Court ruling, this was a 9-0 ruling. And the Supreme Court didn't rule that recess appointments were unconstitutional. They ruled that the Senate and not the President determines when the Senate is in recess. It's pretty straightforward. Like, even though it's a legislative trick to prevent the President from appointing justices, the Senate has the legal prerogative to pull off that trick. And I just want you to think about it. If the President can determine when the Senate is in recess, then the President doesn't need the Senate to approve any appointments. Like, theoretically, he could just appoint 27 people to the Supreme Court. Like, you were in recess, sorry, fuck you. Like, because I said so. So obviously the onus is on the Senate to determine when the Senate is in recess. And the court said, I believe, if they're gone for like 10 days, then the default assumption is that they are automatically in recess. So, like, it's not a terrible ruling. It actually makes like the most logical sense probably of anything this court has ruled on. Like, the Senate determines when they are in recess. If they're gone for a really, really long time, then we'll call that a recess.
Okay, so like I agree with the part of that, like the Senate should, but the Senate shouldn't be playing these fucking games. And that's the whole problem with this, is that they're playing games with this in order to play partisan politics to block all appointments. And it's not, like I said, it's not just Democrats that are getting blocked. It's not just Republicans that are doing it. It's Democrats that are doing it too. And it's fucking breaking the system so that nothing gets done. And that is the whole problem here.
But in reality, recess appointments don't. I know Nick wants to go ahead, but in reality, the reason we have the recess appointments in the Constitution is because when it took the Congress months to get back to D.C. when this country was like founded, like there's really no need for that provision in the Constitution anymore, but it's still there, so you have to enforce it. But with jet travel and telephones and internet and all this, like the Senate can be actively aware of what the president is doing and emergency situations that might require an emergency appointment. So like there's really no need for recess appointments anyway in the modern era. And so the fact that the Senate is doing tricks to effectively get rid of them in most circumstances is perfectly fine with me. Like I really think this is like the biggest non-issue ever. The only thing is that this should also prove is when the Senate does go into recess and recess appointments do happen, like that's just the Senate saying we want you to appoint somebody that's bad because we don't want to take the heat for it. So just remember that. But other than that, I have no issues with this at all. And I hope they do it to every president.
It is. Right, it's very political. The big thing is, it would be a real non-issue if it wasn't for the context in which this is happening. And the context is we want to try and minimize everything the president can do while still doing as little as possible so that he will leave office with a relatively unsuccessful federal or term in the federal government. That I think is the underlying goal here, and why I think that it actually is a bit of an issue. If this had been a situation where Congress is willing to actually work with the president, not demand he meet them on their terms and then give even more, and then when he doesn't do that, point fingers and say he's not negotiating and all that crap. But if they were actually trying to work together for the betterment of the country, this would be a great ruling. We wouldn't be having this conversation. The problem is that it isn't that way.
Definitely. Like, I would agree with Sean 100% if our government actually fucking worked. But now we have, especially one side that's trying to basically burn the house down. And that's a real problem. And games like this is just another way of saying, well, look, we don't like specific parts about the government. So we're not going to allow you, we're not going to pass anything through. Oh, you got appointments? Too fucking bad. We're not going to pass it. And now, okay, so President says, all right, well, fuck off. I'm going to go put my own guys in there. I'm going to do a recess appointment. And then the court comes in and says, nope, can't do it because they're playing these fucked up games? That's fucking stupid. This is why the ruling is an issue. It's not a non-issue. If things were great and things like actually worked the way they were supposed to, completely agree, Sean. We don't need to rule. It's modern day. Great. But the Senate is fucking broken. The Congress is fucking broken. And these games are just making it worse. That's why we need to do something. Like, there needs to be something done about this. These games need to be, like, they need to get rid of the ability to do these pro forma games.
But
if you're gonna have a session, actually do something.
Well, I don't understand. I don't understand what you wanted the court to rule. Like, first of all, it's 9-0, so it's like open and shut for the court. Secondly, what are they going to rule? That this is totally constitutional, but since we don't like the way the Congress is functioning right this minute, we're going to rule it constitutional, unconstitutional.
No, Sean, you're absolutely right about pointing that out. That's not the thing. It's the fact that this would come up now. That's the issue. You're right that the court is basically, it's in this case in particular, they're trapped by their own jobs and they're doing their jobs. I'm not blaming the court on this one at all. It's the fact that this became an issue at this time frame that is indicative of the problem. Not the court doing what it's supposed to do. That's a different thing.
Right. They're basically, what they did is that they pointed out a major problem with this ruling.
But
so we need to address this problem in whatever way we can. Like, maybe having the Senate change the Senate rules. That would be nice.
Well, I mean, Harry Reid already did that for certain judicial nominees. He got rid of the filibuster.
He did. Yes. He removed the nuclear option. Yes.
But
he did the nuclear option.
But, like, it's just, like, I feel like on this issue, and the reason I wanted to do this story, besides the fact that I love talking about Supreme Court stories, obviously, was that this is like an issue of people blatantly making shit up about this ruling. Like, the court ruled something very, very specific, and people are saying that the court decided all of a sudden that recess appointments overall are unconstitutional just when Obama did it. Like, that's making shit up. They ruled that the Senate determines when the Senate is in recess. Period. End of sentence. It's really that simple.
And except what it means in this specific context, and it's not a contextual ruling. And like, you're right. I don't know what else they could have done for this ruling, but still, it this whole thing just points out how grossly broken our system is right now. That you can play these pro forma games and get away with it, and make it so that nothing works. And that's what I really wanted to point out. But I guess we can say agree to disagree again.
2 for 2.
2 for 2.
But
all right.
I think we actually do agree on this ruling, just not on the we don't like the context.
You're right. We do agree on the ruling. It's just the context that we think is, Jeff and I think is problematic, and you somewhat disagree.
That would be the disagree part, on agree to disagree. So okay. Anyway, so let's move on to something where we might actually agree on. But first, let me check something. Hold. No, Sean, we're not talking about unions. I actually found that ruling kind of, I don't know. Anyway, open carry.
Before you start, I just want to say that's another ruling we were to totally disagree because people were making shit up about that ruling too. But whatever.
We can talk about it later tonight or something.
Yeah, probably maybe the after show. Anyway, Target has been in the sights of both gun control and open carry groups lately with its refusal to make a decision whether or not to allow customers to openly carry loaded semi-automatic rifles into their stores. Notice, Jordan, I did not say assault rifle. You should be proud of me. Anyway, on one side, you have Open Carry Texas that has done demonstrations in such places like Chipotle's, Chili's, Starbucks, and Sonic. On the other side, you have the Bloomberg-backed group Moms Demand Action that have been petitioning these restaurants in these different places to discourage open carry within the walls of their establishment, which they're legally able to do. Now, Target has finally come to a decision. Interim Target CEO John Mulligan recently released a statement saying, quote, "As you have likely seen in the media, there has been a debate about whether guests in communities that permit open carry should be allowed to bring firearms into Target stores. Our approach has always been to follow local laws, and of course we will continue to do so. But starting today, we will also respectfully request that guests not bring firearms to Target, even in communities where it's permitted by law. We've listened carefully to the nuances of the debate and respect the protected rights of everyone involved. In return, we are asking for help in fulfilling our goal to create an atmosphere that is safe and inviting for our guests and team members. This is a complicated issue, but it boils down to a simple belief. Bringing firearms to Target creates an environment that is at odds with the family-friendly shopping and work experience we strive to create." So there you go. Another establishment has asked people to stop bringing their guns. Now, of course, I agree with this. I think I think open carry is ridiculous and unnecessary. And really, if you're a pro-Second Amendment person, you should also be against this because it makes you all look stupid. It makes you all look bad. It makes you all look crazy. But that's just my opinion on it. I want to get your guys' reaction to this. What do you think about this specific decision by Target and all of these different places, and just in general about the whole open carry movement? What do you think that they're going to accomplish?
Can I jump in on this one first, actually?
Go ahead, Nick.
I've
had it off.
First off, my city just got a couple Targets after our brand, Zellers, the Canadian Walmart really went under and was bought by Target. So it for some reason I feel a connection now, even though I don't shop there. But anyway, so this I think they're taking the right stance. I think most companies that request customers not bring loaded weapons into the store are in the right on that in that case, regardless of the legality of it. And they're legally right, or sorry, regardless of the freedom to do so. That's what I mean. Because legally they have the right to say no, because they're a private business. They can do that. And in exercising their rights, this is one case where I think most of us would agree with the corporate policy that says, yeah, we don't really like it when our customers come in armed to the teeth. It's not something we like very much at all. It scares business, because it does. Even in places that are very gun heavy, most sensible people don't feel the need to carry it everywhere they go. So to see someone carry it everywhere they go is unsettling, and you're going to be a little nervous about going back there. I would feel the same way about seeing a very loud altercation in the middle of a store. Maybe deter me from wanting to go back, especially if it's my first time there. So this makes all the sense in the world to me. Their decision, and I think it's great, because I really dislike the open carry groups. Not on the right to have their group and to have their position. They're free to do that, no problem there. Just I think their position's incorrect, and I think it doesn't look good. It looks belligerent even when it's not. That it's just the very nature of carrying a very dangerous weapon. You look hostile even if you're not trying to be.
All right, I'm almost afraid to go to Sean. Sean?
So, first of all, we have to make hilarious jokes, and the fact that this place is literally called Target, and there are bullseyes everywhere, and now you can't bring your guns there. That is obviously...
What is this country coming to?
So obviously they're sending both messages, and they want to have it both ways, because, like, it's called Target. But I actually think Open Carry America is my new favorite group in the entire world. Because Open Carry America, in an attempt to establish Second Amendment rights, has actually solidified property rights in a way that no other group can. Like, they keep getting refused every time they try and do Second Amendment rights. Companies are like, nah, you gotta respect our private property, and like it gets in people's head. Like, yeah, you have the right to do that, but as soon as you enter my property or my house or my domain, then you gotta follow my rules. So I actually kind of like them because they're inadvertently like shooting themselves in the foot, pun intended. But like as far as like Target, like it totally makes sense. I heard that they were actually going to switch to uniforms with the bullseye on them, and you can't do that if you're going to have people bringing guns into the stores. Like that just doesn't make any sense. Also, like it just doesn't. No, but in all seriousness, it's up to them, and I fully respect Target's right to do so. The open carry, I have mixed feelings about because. In reality, like I understand why you want to open carry. I understand you want to exercise and normalize your Second Amendment rights. But you're also alienating people and getting people to say, that's not normal, and I don't want that here. And the only reason the other thing that I just wanted to mention is that the Moms Demand Action is a phony group that's headed by Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who is not a mom, last time I checked. It's just the name that he chose.
He's also not a mayor anymore, so...
Former Mayor Michael Bloomberg, but I just want to—he's still in the mayors against.
Oh, okay.
No, I just want to say
I did mention that this Moms in Action is Bloomberg backed.
I know. I just wanted to say, like, I hate that all these groups run on family or like just fucking show your goddamn own message. Like they always say, family, moms, protect the children's society. When like it's fuck you, all right. So fuck you, Mayor Bloomberg. But other than that, I totally agree with Target's position. And I think they should change their logo.
All right, so that was a rather I'm sorry, I'm trying to come up with
words. Words are being
pun.
said. I don't know what else to say.
Jeff, you took a shot in the dark doing this story, thinking I might disagree, but it turned out that your aim was true, and we're all basically on the same side here.
Yeah, we are all straight shooting.
We're on the same side of this firing squad.
I am 3 seconds away from ending this call and leaving the show if we don't stop with the gun puns.
Oh, come on. We need more puns. Gun puns, especially.
No.
I think what
They have to be good. They have to
I-
actually be, or so
All right.
terrible they're good.
I think what Nick is saying
All
is
right.
that
Ugh.
we've taken punning out back and shot it at this point.
All right. So
I swear to God, Sean.
let's take a shot at our last story.
I'll let it slide.
All right, Jeff, draw.
Fuck you
All right.
guys.
That's why I love the show, man. Terrible puns. All right. Final story of the night. A new study of American work habits shows that Americans don't take enough vacation time. An Oxford economic analysis done this year notes that in America, the only developed country that doesn't have mandated vacation time off from work, workers, when given vacation time, most often don't even use it. Now, this study shows that 4 out of 10 Americans that get vacation time, they don't use them, they stockpile them. They leave about an average of 8 unused vacation days. Now, that's around 4, okay, so get this is a crazy number. That's around 429 million days of unused vacation days a year when you add up everyone's stockpiled vacation days in the entire United States. That's amazing. Now, you think that would be good for corporations, right? As the more you're at the office and the more you're at work, the more you get done, right? Well, according to managers, HR professionals, and behavioral economists, some time off actually makes you more productive. Like, you take some time off, you come back, you're refreshed, you're ready to go. Makes sense. Also, it makes you happier and healthier, but obviously most companies don't give a shit about those. But there are some more interesting facts from other studies. Now, in the United States, 85.8% of men and 66.5% of women work more than 40 hours a week. That's amazing. According to the International Labor Organization, Americans work 137 more hours per year than Japanese workers, 260 more hours per year than British workers, and 499 more hours per year than French workers. Look at them lazy French people. America's number one. We're number one. Now, the BLS data showed that since 1950, American work productivity has increased by 400%. So by that estimate, if Americans worked 11 hours per week at today's level of productivity, get shit done, that should allow you to have the same standard of living of that of a full-time worker from the 1950s, just based on productivity alone. Now, another way to look at that is if our standard of living should be about 4 times higher than someone from living in the 1950s. Now, obviously, that hasn't happened, right? Oh, but look, corporations are the richest they've ever been. And income inequality, super high. Richer getting richer, obviously we've all stayed the same. So, anyway, that point aside, Americans are skipping vacations, right? Working longer and longer hours, and are more productive than any other country. So basically, Americans are workaholics that don't really see much fruit for their labor. Now, a 2013 study found that for those who work more than 47 hours a week, those 5 extra hours, there are 5 extra hours, correlate with a 1% increase in yearly wages. Now, there was an amazing experiment done that showed that overworking could be more common when it comes to even better paying jobs. Now, this experiment was led by University of Chicago Business School professor Christopher C. Now, in a lab, students could earn chocolates by listening to noises, right? Kind of a strange experiment. Or they could relax and listen to music. Now, the catch is that they could only eat the chocolate when they relaxed. They couldn't bring it home with them. Okay, so you had to eat it while you were there and only while you were relaxing. So C found that the subjects had an irrational tendency to earn far more chocolate than they gave themselves time to eat. They essentially hoarded. And as their pay rate went up, okay, as they got more chocolates, in the form, if they got more and more chocolates, right, they worked even harder to get more and more chocolates. Okay, so according to C, he says that this demonstrates a behavioral tendency towards over-earning and mindless accumulation. It's basically people working their asses off in pursuit of money they'll never be able to enjoy. Now, I thought that this was pretty fascinating, but I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. What do you think, about the whole vacation thing, about the experiment? I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think Americans should get more vacation days or take more vacation? Or why do you think that we don't take vacation days seriously?
I want to get in on this first, but it's just like American culture. A lot of it is we're like workaholics. We stockpile our vacation days, as Jeff said, instead of reloading like we should. Take that time off. But it's just
Sean.
like it's really something like that's uniquely American, because a lot of people, when they take vacation, like I know some people in my family have actually showed up to work and they said, no, you're actually on vacation today. Like, they don't even go anywhere when they do take the time off. So, and also stockpiling vacation days goes towards that mindless accumulation, because in a lot of places, when you retire, you get those days added to your pay, right? Like, especially in public sector work, like if you retire, those vacation days go into your like final like compensation and all that. So like, it's just an American thing. And the French are obviously lazy bastards, right? They sit around drinking wine all day. Like, there's a reason we changed French fries to freedom fries. There's a reason Jordan left, because he wanted to legally change his last name from French to Freedom. That's totally truthful. Like, it's just we're wired, or not we're wired. We're like, culturally we want to work harder, and it's like a lot of it's a male thing, like, because 85% of men compared to like 60-something% of women. But like, women are getting that way too, because like it's just the way we tend to be in America. Like, we work hard, and then we don't remember why we were working hard. Like, we're supposed to work hard to buy things and have experiences like vacations, but we don't do that.
All right, so outside perspective, Nick, Canada, give us a Canadian perspective on how insane we are.
You guys really need some fucking vacation time. Holy crap. Like, my God.
Fuck yes.
It's like we have, last time I checked, we have laws up here that say at most 40 hours a week, and there are a lot of companies who, if you go over, you get time and a half. But there's a lot of them who, if you go over, they won't pay you, because they're like, no, we told you 40 hours a week. You're not working right now anymore. Beyond that, we're not letting you, because we don't want to pay for more. Period. So I figured you have time and a half, Sean, but it appears a lot of places don't follow it too much, or the income is so low that time and a half is almost meaningless for some people. But you guys really need some vacation time. Holy crap! Like, man. I mean, granted, we're Canada up here, we're nothing like the French or the Europeans are, who have fantastic vacation hours. Oh man, I would love vacation hours like that. Mm-hmm. Especially being in some of the places that they're in. Oh, to relax there. Oh man, take me away. But jeez, you guys really need to relax a bit.
I'll agree with Sean. This is a unique American thing. This goes back to the American exceptionalism idea. Like, okay, you're supposed to work hard. You're supposed to work hard so you can reap that reward. Oh, by the way, it's that endless maze that you have to keep on running. Oh, by the way, there's stuff over here. There's stuff over here. You got to buy this. You got to keep up with the Joneses. You got to make more money. You got to work harder. You got to keep going on that treadmill. Because what we have now, especially, and it's true especially nowadays, we don't make anything here. We're a consumer-driven society. As Dan Spearman loves to point out,
but if I may, that's the thing. But that's the thing. That's the thing there. That's what I actually think this is. I don't think it's just that you work hard and that's it. I think there was a point in time where the goal of working hard ceased to be vacation time and seeing things, and it became about the accumulation of goods, and that was why money was saved up, was to accumulate luxuries. The automobile is a fantastic example where before it wasn't the basis of a thriving economy. Now it's every family should have their own vehicle so that they can drive to work and crap. and public transit's like, for those who struggle or those who are working class who can't afford a car, it's the staple of a middle class economy. That used to be the luxury item. Now it's the staple. This is what I think has really happened your vacation time. You stopped caring about it, and instead you started trying to accumulate luxuries, but it's gone to the point where they're not luxuries anymore. They've become necessities for the function of the economy.
See that's an amazing point. We're like suffering from our own like status as the top dog, like the first world nation, right? It's sort of like we're a victim of our own success in a way, as a country and as a society. That's amazing.
The amazing thing about this is this isn't like somebody who works at like Mickey D's or White Castle or one of these fast food joints that doesn't get vacation days and they feel overworked. This is people leaving days on the table, not taking their days because they don't want to go on vacation. Like if we had like compulsory like vacation in this country, like I think maybe every other Western country has, or most of them, whatever, like people would be pissed off. Like there's
no. Look at the reasons that people actually like keep putting in more hours, because competition at the jobs, especially at decent jobs for pay raises and promotions, it's cutthroat. So you want to put in as much time as you can to try and suck up, kiss up, to make sure that you get that benefit, that you beat Bob over in the next cubicle who's gunning for that manager job or whatever.
But also, like, time and a half is a huge incentive for people to work longer. Like that's a big increase for, like, I don't care like if you're on the lower end or the higher end, like you're multiplying your wage by 1.5. Like that is a huge incentive. There's a reason when you go to work in most places in this country, that it's not that they delegate overtime to you. They say, hey, I need you to work this extra amount of time. It's people compete over overtime, like hours. Like they say, I want to work that overtime, and you get it usually based on seniority. So we compete.
But this is also the thing too. That attitude is rewarded. That attitude is what gets rewarded, is those who stay behind for a time and a half. And it's not wrong in a sense, because it shows a conviction and a determination to do the job. It means there's a chance that these people want to stay with the work, that they're willing to put in the time and above and beyond. It looks good, don't get me wrong, and penalizing that's bad. The problem is it's gotten to the point where that seems to be almost like the norm. That, I think, is the issue. It's left another being exceptional. It's become norm.
But there's another factor to this as well, where people will want to put on time and a half because their wages have been flat for the last 30 years. And there's another thing where you have to put in all that overtime in order to just make ends meet as well and to get those staples. So, I mean, it's important that we don't leave that out.
Well, also, like, keep it real. A lot of people are living beyond their means. Like, they make a decent enough money to have a certain lifestyle, but instead of buying the sensible car, they bought the unsensible car, and then they work harder to pay for that car. Like there is a little bit of that too. It's like because a lot of people in this country, I'm talking like middle class people, are living with stuff that they don't really need, but they want it, so they're working hard to pay off their credit cards and stuff like that. Like, so there is a mixture.
But at the same time, we need people to spend money, because that's the engine of our entire economy. Once again, we get back to the snuggie economy. Like, people got to buy shit. That's why George Bush, after 9/11, he said, I don't know, go out and buy stuff. Go shopping.
Well, actually,
because we need to.
Well, consumption does not, like, that's a horrible Keynesian fallacy. Consumption does not drive the economy. It's actually
fuck off with your supply side bullshit.
Expanding your productive capacity, which drives the economy. Like,
I'm sorry, but if you make a ton of widgets, but ain't nobody got money to buy those widgets, your widgets ain't selling.
First of all, you could sell widgets. You could get widgets or apps. You could get those kind of stuff out there for free and then make money off ad revenue. Not a big deal. But
No, I'm not talking about like something. I'm talking just like a regular like good. That's what I mean by widget. That's like the economics sort of term, I guess.
You also got to realize that just like not taking vacation time has become a part of the social attitude about surrounding work in America, it really seems that so has consumption and so has what you own. And I think this is part of the problem and part of the reason why people do spend outside their means. There's a sense that if you don't have certain things, that you're an outcast in the in society. That, for example, there's a reason smartphones became as popular as it was, and it wasn't out of necessity. It wasn't out of a driving need for people to have it. It's because certain people could afford it, and they drew more attention socially than others. So then people want to try and match that and want to meet that, and inevitably a lot of people do wind up going beyond their means because there's a sense that I need to become socially accepted, or even perhaps in a workplace to show that I belong here. Maybe I would hazard that one. That one you guys can jump on, but well, I do think
cell phones are.
It is a factor. It is a factor, and there's a lot of different factors that play into this. You know, there is the keeping up with the Joneses mentality, once again by our like shopping culture, right? And there's also, I mean, the fact that we haven't had wage increases, that, you know, there has been inflation, everything has gone up in price, and people have less and less money. So they're going to want to work more to make that up.
Well, and also the cell phone argument is expanding your productive capacity, which is making stuff for less money, faster, and cheaper. The reason we drive cars is not because people wanted to drive cars, it's because somebody figured out, well, that's part of it, but somebody figured out how to make cars better, cheaper, faster. And
then the same people that figured out how to make the cars.
Sean, that's the start of it. That's the start of it. What then happened was you saw everyone move out of the vicinity of their work environments, and that's when the car became a necessity because you needed to get back to work. And it's also around this time that the working class, I mean, look, post-Second World War, you saw massive immigration booms in the United States and in Canada. We had the same thing. We both developed the suburbia around roughly the same time for arguably the same reasons. The dirty foreigners moved into the inner cities and took working-class inner-city jobs. So now the good working folk, the Protestant, Anglo-speaking Protestant folk, move outwards, but still want to work in city or outside the city, and they need cars to get around. At the start, the car became what you produce. Then it became a means of getting to a place because the jobs moved away for certain people who could afford the cars, and then the car became a social symbol on top of that.
Technically,
and then you also needed to be able to afford the car, which is why, like Henry Ford, he paid his workers enough to be able to buy those cars as well. So that also factors into that. We're not all wrong here.
He was actually one of the things he was trying to do was raise the wage for car technicians and put other car companies out of business by doing so that he could actually monopolize the industry and raise prices. But that's a whole other story. But anyway, back to like the original point. The reason the city's argument, that's not how it happened. We weren't not in all cases. Detroit is a good example of people fleeing like black people and poor people, like white flight. We know that like Edison, Detroit. But like the reason people moved out of the city and bought cars to drive back into the city is because the city got fucking expensive. Like when all the jobs are concentrated in one area, that real estate becomes more and more expensive, and you move out and commute. Like we got people commuting to New York City from Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Jersey, not to mention all the other boroughs. Like that's just the way it works. Like you keep expanding outward to afford to live.
Sean, you can't. I probably didn't do a good job painting the picture, but the example I was taking wasn't. Granted, the example I gave was a little more racial than it should have been, but my point wasn't that it's to get away from people of different race. It's a sense of preserving the social climate that existed before. There's a reason a lot of the people who moved out, the middle class people especially, were white and mostly Protestant and spoke English. And it's because, and why they moved into neighborhoods that relatively endorsed that sort of viewpoint, is because it was attempt to keep that social sort of that society homogenous, not to allow different cultural elements into the mix. Because prior to that, in the 30s and the 20s, we had a very closed-door immigration policy here and in the United States, and it barred that for that very fear that it would interfere with society too much and cause too much trouble. So that was still in the backs of people's minds. You're right that there were other factors, and I did a bad job of not addressing those, but you can't downplay the fact that it was to preserve a certain social attitude.
Back to vacation.
Yes.
Back to vacation.
Sorry to skip over that, but I get what you're saying. But back to the vacation thing. It's like an inherent thing in America. Like we work hard. A lot of people are just love working. Like they work. They don't even remember the reasons why they work anymore. So it's partly America. It's partly our just culture, and it's partly fear. Like a lot of people are afraid to take a vacation and come back and find out that they're not needed anymore, and then lose their job. So it's a mixture of a bunch of different things.
Yeah, I can agree with that for sure. All right, so that's all we have tonight. Great show. We're off tomorrow night, 4th of July.
Happy birthday to America.
America.
Cough, cough. Birthday was yesterday. Cough.
Yeah, okay. Well, hey, this is America. We don't need your facts. Take them back to Canada. Canada, where they belong.
Okay, we'll continue to live your American dream up here too. Don't worry, we like it.
Ouch! Oh, right in the ribs.
We only want to hear about Canada when it's about the Keystone Pipeline, which is America's oil located in your country.
All right. Well, anyway, thank you guys for tuning in here on the live stream here on TYT Community Live. We'll be back for both shows Thursday, Friday at our new time, 8 p.m., assuming everything works out, following the Young Turks live stream. Hopefully that works out better next time. Hopefully. I want to thank Nick and Sean for being part of my panel tonight. You guys are great. I had a lot of fun debating and talking these stories.
Yep, pleasure to be here. Stay tuned, by the way, after Jeff's done talking for previews from next week's episode.
No, we don't have previews for next week's episode.
This is all scripted. We're going off script now. Quick, before the corporate guns get us. Oh my god!
We get next week's news in advance. Jeff is a magic psychic man.
Or I may be a time traveler. I don't know. But I can't tell you guys.
He's the doctor.
Anyway, thank you again for joining us. If you want to know where to find us or how to join the panel, you can go to our Facebook page. Hey, facebook.com/TYT Nation or TYT Community. There's also a page set up specifically for community. And if you want to go on the show, you can email me or tweet me. Tweet me at Jeff's Politics or at TYT Community and send me an email, jeffw@tytnetwork.com. And make sure, if you haven't already, give us a like on this video and any of the clips released throughout the week. Definitely appreciate that. If you haven't already, subscribe. That helps us out a ton. That way you can, every time we release a clip, because sometimes I'll release some stuff that wasn't part of the live show, solo videos, stuff like that. So if you want to keep up with that, subscribe. And if you really, really want to be invested in the show, like literally invested, we have a Patreon page where you can set up a donation if you want to help us out, if you want to help us continue to grow and get some better stuff and better recording equipment and all that. Maybe help me move to LA to get to the studio, which would be awesome. So with all those shout outs out of the way, I'm thinking next week also of taking questions at the end of the show and answering questions for whatever panelists I have. So if you guys want to ask questions, sort of like Ask Jank in this case, it's like Ask TYT. Hey, that's a hashtag. Hashtag Ask TYT. Or TYT Community. Awesome. And we'll answer your questions. I know there's a lot of new people in the live stream that don't quite know us yet. We've been around for a little while. We are a proud member of the TYT Network, so if you want to get to know us, ask your questions, and we'll be happy to answer it at the end of next week's show.
Hey,
Sean, what's up?
Jeffrey, I have a question. How do people in our audience get on our panel?
He
I already answered that question.
Sean.
I don't think you did answer that.
Actually, I did.
He did.
So if anybody has any questions, of course, go to our Facebook page or tweet me or email me. All that stuff I could put in the description as well. So anyway, you guys have a fantastic 4th of July if you're here in America. If not, go eat some freedom fries or something. I don't know. Just have a great weekend, guys. We'll see you next week here on TYT Community. Looking forward to coming back. And you guys have a fantastic night. Goodbye, everybody.
Freedom.
So long, ladies and gentlemen.
Goodbye.